Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. And so today we are on book 6 of this series, and the murderer's tale is not so much a mystery. I mean, Dame Frevisse solves who the murderer is, but this is a book where we all know who the murderer is because we see him plotting and we see him commit the murder and we get his internal gloating. And Dame Frevisse, and you spend the whole book basically desperately wanting Frevisse to solve this because the man who's been framed for the murder is a really, really nice guy, and the guy who committed the murder is really, really awful. This is one of those ones that feels lighter in a way because, in its way, just because the murderer is somebody we have no sympathy for. This is a bad guy doing a bad thing, and we don't feel sorry for him. In previous books, we've had the one young man who committed a murder because the man that he killed was awful and was ruining everyone's lives, and because he wanted to make sure that the woman that he loved was free to marry who she wanted. She wasn't going to marry him, she didn't want to marry him, but he loved her enough to want to get her free of this terrible person, and also because this guy was so awful that, he didn't even care that it would make his life harder if this guy died because at least he wouldn't have to deal with it. It's that sort of thing where you quit your job because your job is so awful that you don't even care that you're not going to get any more money because it's just eating your soul alive. He's in one of those situations, but so you feel really, really bad for him in the end because he's going to be taken off, he's going to be executed for a murder, and he doesn't deserve it. And in the second book, The Servant's Tale, where you have this mother who's clearly just suffered some kind of psychotic break when she starts killing people because she thinks she's helping them get to heaven. She is, she's somebody who clearly just needs psychological help, and so you feel awful about the whole thing because you don't want bad things to happen to this woman. You want somebody to help her get better. She's just lost her mind. But in this one, the murderer is a bad guy. And so this is one of those ones where you are unashamed and unapologetic about not liking him because he's just bad. This is a guy who sees that his cousin has been afflicted with these days we know that they're probably epileptic seizures, but back then people would have thought that he was being possessed by a demon or something. And so it's your cousin is regularly being possessed by a demon and is suffering these horrific, things, fits on the floor, and he's flailing and frothing at the mouth. And all you can think about is how inconvenienced you are. And you've decided that you hate this servant who is his best friend because this man has stuck it out with him. The villain of this piece, whose name is Giles, is genuinely just the absolute worst. He's selfish, and I am not really the world's biggest fan of the use of misogyny to just mean sexist towards women. I believe that by having moved misogyny to mean merely sexist towards women, we have lost the line that allows us to use misogyny to mean people who hate women. But this is a guy who, if ever one deserves to call somebody a misogynist pig, it's this guy, because the entire book is full of him thinking about, oh, look at that tall nun, he thinks of Frevisse. She's just looking to gossip because all women are dumb. And look, my wife is smart enough to know that she shouldn't argue with me because she's not like those women who think they're smart and will keep arguing. And it's yes, she's smart enough to know it's not worth the effort, not that she thinks you're right. So he's a absolute bastard. There's this whole section where he's like, when I kill Lionel, when I kill my cousin, his name is Lionel. I think it's Lionel. I never remember names because I'm bad at that kind of thing. As I've said a million times, I never take notes. And you have this guy, and yes, Lionel, and he's just sitting there thinking, oh, she'll be sad when Lionel dies. Let's make sure that she has a dog so she can cry over the dog just like a woman. Because this is a man who clearly has never liked anyone in his life. He clearly does not care about other people. In fact, he's possibly borderline sociopathic because it's clear that he doesn't think much of other people. He has no respect for other people. He thinks he is the most genius person ever. And so it's, he's just really, really awful. In fact, he is so openly and clearly awful that by the end of the book, Frevisse actually winds up feeling guilty for pursuing the truth of this murder, not because she didn't want truth and justice, and not because truth and justice didn't happen. The bad guy gets his. The good guy is told, no, you didn't commit the murder that was committed. You were completely innocent of it. This woman who was previously trapped with this guy, going to be married to him for the rest of her life, well, she's going to be a widow in very short order, and so she's not going to be having any trouble. She's going to be, a widow in the Middle Ages, a wealthy widow in the Middle Ages. This is a great thing. But the thing is, Frevisse winds up being forced to admit to herself that part of the reason she was so sternly determined was because she liked Lionel, because she knew Lionel was in no way culpable for what he had done, that Lionel had loved his friend Martin so much that he had apparently told this servant, this man Martin, over and over, listen, if you want to leave, if you want to do something, if you want to have a life for yourself, you can do this. Please, go do this. I don't want to keep you trapped here. And Martin had made his choice. Had made his choice that he would stay with his friend for as long as his friend needed him. And the fact that Giles arranges his murder is just, it's horrible on so many levels because, of course, Martin never did anything wrong, and that Giles was imagining to himself that Martin was some kind of self-centered, smug bastard, but also that Martin had promised to stay with his friend all the way along right to the bitter end, and that chance was taken from him. And so, there's so many levels of bad to this. And the thing is, though, that Frevisse, she sees through Giles right away, sees how awful he is, sees how he is with his wife, sees how he is with people, sees the way he spreads rumors about his own cousin for his own purposes, because he's just awful like that. Because people should be allowed to, not have everybody know that they are possessed by a demon on a regular basis if they don't want to. Like, it's not anybody's business. But he's been spreading these rumors anyways, and so Frevisse knows herself well enough to know that half the reason she kept pursuing Giles in this, kept looking into him, kept pushing this, was because she just didn't like him, because she knew he was a bad person, not because she had some deep insight that he was absolutely the murderer. And Claire calls her on it, and so by the end of this, Frevisse is is internally conflicted, because on the one hand she was right, and her pursuing this to ground made sure that Lionel was declared innocent, that his innocence was vindicated, and so on and so forth, but her reasons for doing it were not the right ones, because if you're going to be pursuing something like this to ground, it should be because you want truth, not because you want to get that guy whether or not he's actually guilty. And to go on a sidebar, because this is what I do, this is very much the great Xander telling Buffy Willow says kick his ass debate, which is, sure, maybe Xander made the right call, but what was his reason for doing it? In that final episode of Season 2 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, becoming Part 2, where Willow is going to try the spell to give Angel his soul back, thus turning him from a stone-cold psychotic killer back into a nice guy with a conscience and everything else. And Xander is told, go tell Buffy that I'm going to try this spell again, and he shows up and Buffy is loading up to go after Angel and kill him because she's like, listen, I've let this go on too long, I have to stop looking at him and see the guy I'm in love with, he's not there anymore, yada yada. And Xander looks at her and lies through his teeth. Instead of telling Buffy that Willow was going to try the spell again, he tells her that Willow says kick his ass. And it was the right call in that Buffy couldn't afford to hesitate. This was not a situation where she could afford to hesitate. And if she had thought that there was a chance of getting Angel back, she might well have hesitated and lost everything. But Xander's reason, I maintain to this day, was, I want to get Angel because I'm still upset that he landed the girl that I'm still in love with, even though I'm pretending that I'm not. And the reason for his doing so was wrong. And that's where Frevisse is I know Giles is a bad person, so Giles from this book, not Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, let's be clear on this. This man is a bad person, so I'm going to go after him until I can prove that he's the one who committed this crime. And that's not how you approach anything. It's not how you approach a murder investigation. The last thing anybody should be doing in a murder investigation is saying, I'm in this to prove this guy is the murderer. The point is that you need to be going into this to say, I'm going to find out who it is, not I'm going to prove that guy is. It was, in a way, just her luck that he actually was, but her determination was very much fueled by her dislike of Giles and her liking of Lionel, and it puts Frevisse into a quandary at the end of the book, because she has spent the entire book thinking about her struggles with her prejudices against the new prioress Alys, who is actually actively the worst. That comes up in a book or two, in the next book or two, or whatever. At some point soon it comes up. Alys is actually the worst, and Dame Frevisse is completely right to just want to string her up by something, but the point is that when you have sworn to obedience and Alys has been elected prioress, you are sworn to obey your prioress even if she is actively the worst, and that's just how that works. Anyway, we'll get to the thing about Alys when we get to it. But what we've got here is just that Frevisse is basically having to spend this book trying to reel in her sharper instincts, trying to reel in the fact that she doesn't like this person, she doesn't want to deal with them, she doesn't suffer fools gladly, she doesn't have the patience for this, and it keeps coming back around and around and around for her. And it's one of the things that she struggles with, is that it's easy to obey somebody when you like them and respect them. It's a lot harder when you think they're the worst. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now because I think I have covered everything, including all of the important plot points in this book. So that's all, and I will see you all next week.